The sun rose slowly over the shining towers of Valerian. A pale blue light covered the garden where Elias and Alira often met. But this morning was different. Alira stood alone, her hands behind her back, waiting for a message from the council. Inside, she felt something she hadn't known before she met Elias: nervousness. Not fear exactly, but uncertainty. The council would decide today whether she could continue her emotional studies with the human envoy. Elias arrived a few minutes later. He noticed the look in her eyes. Still waiting? He asked. Alira nodded. Yes, they are still in session. They walked together in silence for a while, passing glowing plants and quiet fountains. Then Alira turned to him and said, "If they ask me to stop, I won't." Elias looked at her with surprise. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "What I have learned from you is more than science. It's part of who I am now." Elias smiled. "I'm glad, but that might not be easy." "I know," Elias said calmly, "but change never is." Later that day she was called to the council tower. The chamber was large and filled with soft light. 12 council elders sat in a circle, their faces calm, but firm. "You were sent to observe human culture," said one. "Instead, you have begun to feel." Alira bowed slightly. "Yes, that is correct." Another elder leaned forward. "This is not our way." "Then perhaps our way must grow," she replied. Murmurs passed through the chamber. This kind of bold answer was rare, especially from a cultural guide. "You believe emotions are useful?" one asked. "I believe they are a part of life," Alira answered. "And I believe the human Elias Ma has shown me what it means to truly connect. Without that, we are only machines of flesh." The room was silent for a long time. Then the eldest counselor spoke. "You are suspended from your post for 1 cycle. You are not to meet the human again during that time." Alira's heart sank. Understood. As she left the chamber, she felt something strange, not anger, not sadness. Something deeper, a quiet storm in her chest. Something humans called loss. That evening, Alira sent Elias one final message before her communication privileges were removed. "They do not understand, but I do. This isn't the end. I will find a way." Elias read the message 3 times. Then he opened his notebook and began writing everything he and Alira had shared. Every moment, every story, every feeling. He would not forget. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening across Valerian. Alira's emotional research, the logs, the recordings, the music, had not disappeared. Before her suspension, she had stored it in the Shared Thought Network, a public knowledge space, used by young scholars. She named it the Human Variable. Students began reading it out of curiosity. At first, they were confused. What was the point of laughter, of stories, of singing when there was no data to be gained? But something about it felt real. A quiet wave began. Valari youths started trying new things. One group painted their dreams on the walls of the science hall, another played earth music in the gardens, trying to mimic human rhythm. Some even began forming friend pairs, emotional partnerships based on shared interests, not assignments. A few elders noticed, and they were alarmed. "This is a disruption," one said. "This must be stopped." But it was too late. Alira's thoughts had sparked a data rebellion. Back in her quarters, Alira was confined to silence. Her communication device was locked, and her work was paused. She spent most of her time in meditation, but her mind often drifted back to Elias, his voice, his questions, his warmth. One night, she heard a soft knock on her door. It was a young Valari named Saran, a student from the Cultural Studies Center. "I read the Human Variable," Saran said, his eyes glowing with emotion. "I didn't understand at first, but now I think I feel what you were trying to show us." Alira's eyes widened. "You read it?" "Many have," Saran said. "It's spreading, quietly, but it's growing." Alira felt something stir again. Hope. Elias too was feeling the silence. He walked alone through the empty halls, thinking about Alira. He missed her questions, her quiet voice, even her strange way of tilting her head when she was curious. Then, one night, his tablet buzzed. A new file appeared, sent through a hidden channel. It was titled, "Listen with the Heart." He opened it and heard Alira's voice, soft and clear. "This is a human lullaby. I do not understand all the words, but I feel the peace inside. I think this is what it means to care." Elias sat back, listening. The song was one he had played for her before. Now hearing her hum it in her soft Valari voice, something inside him moved. She hadn't forgotten. A week later, a small group of Valari students stood before the High Council. "We request open study of human emotions," one said boldly. "We wish to understand more than logic." The elders were shocked. "These ideas come from the suspended guide," one elder said. They are not safe, but the students stood firm. We believe learning is not dangerous. We believe feelings can lead to understanding, not chaos. The council paused. The rebellion wasn't angry, it was curious, hopeful, honest. This wasn't war, it was change. Back in her quarters, Alira's door opened. A council messenger stood outside. The council has chosen to review your suspension, he said. You may continue your research. Under observation. Alira's heart beat faster. The human, she asked. You may meet him again, the messenger said. For now. That evening, Elias walked once more toward the garden. He wasn't sure what to expect. When he turned the corner, he saw her. Alira standing under the silver tree, waiting. They said nothing at first. Then she spoke. You remembered the song, she said. I did, Elias replied. And you remembered me. I could not forget, Alira said gently. You gave me something I did not know I needed. What's that? He asked. She looked at him with glowing eyes. A beginning. In the year 2478, Earth had become a respected part of the Interstellar Alliance. Humans had traveled to many planets, met dozens of alien races, and shared their culture, knowledge, and emotions with the galaxy. But one advanced alien species, known as the Valari, had always kept their distance. The Valari were intelligent, peaceful, and very private. They had tall glowing bodies and large thoughtful eyes. They spoke calmly and slowly, and they always followed logic and science. For many years they watched humans from afar, but never invited them close. That changed when a message arrived at the United Earth Diplomatic Center. It was from the Valari High Council. The message was short, but important. We are ready for cultural exchange. Send your best, one human only. The Earth leaders chose Commander Elias Ma, a 38-year-old diplomat and former starship captain. Elias was calm, respectful, and had a reputation for listening more than talking. He had spent years studying alien cultures, and he had a natural curiosity about life beyond Earth. When he received the mission, Elias packed lightly and boarded a special diplomatic ship. The journey to the Valari homeworld Valerian took only 3 days using a hyperspace route. As his ship landed, Elias looked out the window and saw a shining world of blue forests, silver rivers, and glowing towers that reached into the clouds. A group of Valari stood waiting. They didn't smile, but they didn't frown either. Their expressions were gentle but serious. One of them stepped forward, a tall female Valari with bright green eyes and hair that shimmered like moonlight. She wore a soft white robe and held a small glowing tablet. I am Alira, she said, her voice smooth and melodic. I will be your guide and cultural exchange partner. Welcome to Valerian, Commander Elias Ma. Elias bowed slightly. It's an honor to be here, Alira. She nodded, then turned and began walking. Elias followed her through clean, quiet halls made of crystal and light. Valari cities were silent but alive, full of strange technology and floating lights. No noise, no traffic, no pollution. It was like walking through a dream. As they walked, Alira asked simple questions. What is the average human lifespan? How do humans greet each other? Why do humans sing? Elias answered, each one carefully. He noticed she listened closely, and sometimes her head tilted slightly, like she was thinking about more than she said. That night, Elias was shown to a guest room made of smooth blue stone. It had everything he needed, clean clothes, food, similar to human meals, and a communication tablet. He couldn't contact Earth directly, but messages would be reviewed and passed on through Valari systems. The next morning, Alira took Elias to a learning center, something like a museum, mixed with a school. There, Elias shared videos of Earth, music, art, science, families, animals, and space travel. Valari scholars gathered quietly to watch. They rarely asked questions, but their glowing eyes followed every detail. After a week, Alira began asking deeper questions. How do humans feel love? She asked one day, as they walked near a glowing lake. Elias smiled slightly. That's a big question. Love isn't always logical. It's about connection, trust, caring for someone more than yourself. She looked at him for a moment. Strange. Valari have no word for that kind of feeling. We have loyalty. We have duty. But what you describe it is new. Elias nodded. It's not always easy, but it's important to us. She paused, then said softly, I would like to learn more. As days passed, Elias and Alira spent more time together. They visited gardens where plants changed color with sound. They walked on quiet bridges over floating rivers. Sometimes, they sat and just talked about dreams, about stars, about the idea of home. Alira started showing signs of curiosity that were different from normal Valari behavior. She asked Elias what it felt like to laugh. She asked why humans write stories. She even asked about human families, how children were raised, what it meant to be a parent. One evening, as the sun set over the Crystal Mountains, Alira said, "I have studied human biology. I now understand your reproductive process." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You mean, how we create life?" "Yes," she said calmly. "At first I thought it was only physical, but it seems emotions are involved, connection, affection. You do not reproduce only for survival. You also do it to bond." Elias chuckled softly. "That's true for most of us. It's not just about making children, it's also about love, trust, and building a life together." Alira looked thoughtful. Then, in a quiet voice, she said something that surprised Elias. "I wish to understand this connection. I am curious. Would you be willing to try this with me?" Elias stared at her, stunned. She wasn't joking. She was completely serious, calm, respectful, but deeply curious. After a moment he spoke carefully. "Alira, in human culture, something like that is very personal. It's not something we do just for science. We connect first, build trust, get to know each other." She nodded slowly. "Then we should continue. I wish to understand your kind more completely, not just with my mind, but with myself." Elias looked at the lake, quiet for a while. "Let's take our time. Understanding humans isn't something that happens overnight." Alira smiled, a very small, almost invisible smile, but it was there, the first Elias had seen. "I agree," she said. "Let us begin slowly." Far away, in the Valari High Council chambers, 3 senior advisors watched Elias and Alira through a soft blue screen. Their expressions were unreadable. "He is changing her," one of them said. "She is letting herself be changed," said another. "Perhaps," the third added quietly. "It is time we let change happen." Back at the lakeside, under a sky filled with soft stars, Elias and Alira sat side by side. No one spoke, but something new and ancient had begun between them. Alira was not like other Valari for thousands of years. The Valari people lived with perfect order. Their society was peaceful, logical, and calm. Emotions were studied, not shown. Relationships were based on agreements, not affection. To most Valari, human behavior was strange, sometimes even dangerous, but Alira was different. Ever since she met Elias, the human envoy, she began to feel things she had never felt before: curiosity, excitement, and something else. Something she couldn't explain. Each day, she spent more time with Elias, asking more questions, not just about Earth's science or history, but about human emotions, families, and connection. One morning, Alira invited Elias to a quiet part of the learning gardens. The trees around them had silver leaves, and the air smelled like soft rain. They sat on smooth stone benches under a clear sky. "I have been thinking about our last talk," Alira said. Elias looked at her with interest. "The one by the lake, yes," she replied. "About reproduction and connection." Elias gave a gentle nod. "I remember." Alira paused, searching for the right words. "In Valari culture, reproduction is done in laboratories, too. DNA samples are mixed. Children are raised by learning units, not parents." Elias listened carefully. "You don't raise your own children." "No," she said simply. "We raise minds, not families. It is efficient. No confusion, no attachment." Elias thought about that. "And what do the children grow up to be?" "Scientists, engineers, leaders," she replied. "They are logical, focused, balanced." But she hesitated. "But what?" Elias asked softly. Alira's voice lowered. "But sometimes, they are empty, curious, like me, searching for something we were never taught to understand." Elias leaned forward. "You think emotions are missing?" "Yes," she whispered. A soft wind passed between them. The garden was silent, except for the sound of moving leaves. Then Alira looked directly at Elias and asked, "Would you help me feel what humans feel?" Elias blinked. "You mean, I do not ask for physical action," she said quickly. "I want to experience bonding, emotion, whatever it is that makes you care for others. I want to feel it, not just study it." Elias gave her a thoughtful look. "That takes time, Alira. Humans don't feel deep connection right away. We spend time together, talk, trust, share our lives. It's not a science project." "I understand," she said, "and I am willing to take time." So they began. Each day, Elias and Alira did small things together. They painted images using light ink, a Valari art tool. They told stories. Alira recited ancient Valari legends, and Elias shared Earth's myths and fairy tales. One night, Elias even taught her how to roast sweet fruit over a small flame. just like humans did with marshmallows on camping trips. Alira laughed for the first time when she accidentally dropped hers into the fire. It was a soft, musical laugh, and Elias smiled wide just hearing it. "You laughed," he said, surprised. "I did," she said, eyes glowing brighter than usual. It felt warm. As days turned into weeks, the two grew closer. Alira began asking questions not just from books, but from the heart. "What is it like to miss someone?" she asked one evening. "It's like having a piece of your mind always thinking about them," Elias explained. "You feel a little empty when they're not around." "I think I missed you when you didn't come yesterday," Alira admitted. Elias felt something stir inside him. Alira wasn't just learning, she was changing, but not everyone was pleased. Far above, in the Valari High Council Tower, the elders watched the growing bond between Alira and Elias. They spoke in hushed tones. "She is becoming emotional," one elder said. "That is not the Valari way. The human is influencing her too much," said another. "It may unbalance her mind." Or, said a quiet voice, "it may be evolution." Back on the ground, Elias and Alira visited a music hall. Elias brought recordings of earth music, soft piano, jazz, even a lullaby his mother used to sing. Alira listened closely, her eyes wide. "There is no purpose to this," she said. "No data, no lesson, and yet, I want to listen again." "That's the purpose," Elias said. "Sometimes, feelings are the only reason." After that night, Alira started humming a tune, not a Valari sound, but the human lullaby. Elias noticed, but didn't say anything. One afternoon, Alira looked nervous for the first time. "I have made a request to the council," she said. "I asked permission to continue learning human emotions." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Is that something they would deny?" She looked down. "Valari are expected to remain neutral, balanced. Feelings change that balance. They may think I am losing control." "You're not losing control," Elias said gently. "You're discovering who you are." "But what if who I am is not acceptable to them?" she asked. Elias was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Then you choose who you want to be, not who they want you to be." Alira stared at him. "That is a very human idea." He smiled. "It's also a powerful one." That night, Alira didn't sleep. Valari didn't need much rest, but she usually entered a deep meditation. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the stars. Her thoughts were full of new feelings: joy, fear, hope, even something that might be called affection. She recorded a message in her personal log: "The human has shown me many things. Laughter, sadness, curiosity. I believe I am beginning to feel something deeper. It is not logical, but it is true. I do not wish to stop." The next morning, a message arrived. Alira was to appear before the council in 3 days. Elias would be observed during that time. Alira told him everything. "They want to see if I am fit to continue as a cultural guide," she said. "What if they say no?" Elias asked. She looked at him, her eyes steady. "Then I will have to choose." Elias didn't ask what she meant. He already knew. As they walked once more near the glowing lake, Alira took a deep breath. "I used to believe reproduction was just data. Now I see it's part of something larger, something alive." Elias nodded. "It's about more than biology. It's about connection. Life is about the people we share it with." She turned to him and said softly, "Then let us continue to share." They stood there, not as teacher and student, not as alien and human, but as two minds reaching for something new. In that quiet moment, a bond formed, not physical, not spoken, but deeply real. Something had changed, and neither of them wanted to go back. Elias walked beside Alira through the glowing garden trails, the same place where their journey began. But now everything felt different. The trees looked brighter, the air felt lighter, and Alira, she was different too. Her movements were more relaxed, her voice softer, her eyes more alive. For the first few minutes, they said nothing. They didn't need to. Their quiet steps spoke more than words. Finally, Alira turned to him. "They have given me permission to continue my studies," she said, "but only under careful watch." Elias gave a small smile. "They're still afraid of feelings. They are cautious," she replied. "To them, emotions are like fire. Warm, but dangerous if not controlled." Elias nodded. "But sometimes, fire is what brings light." They sat down near the silver pool where they had once shared stories and music. Alira looked up at the stars. "I've been thinking, Elias, maybe our connection isn't just about learning. Maybe it's a message." "A message?" Elias asked. "Yes, we come from different worlds, different thoughts, different hearts, but somehow, we met in the middle. That must mean something." Elias thought about her words. Maybe the universe wanted us to understand each other, or maybe, she said softly, the universe wanted us to help others understand. He turned toward her. You want to share what we've learned? Alira nodded slowly. Not just with the council, with both worlds, human and Valari. The next day, they began planning. Alira requested permission to give a presentation to the High Council, not a report, but something new, something emotional, something personal. At the same time, Elias contacted his team at the Earth Embassy. He told them he wanted to organize a cultural event, something simple but powerful, a shared story between human and Valari. When Alira mentioned the idea to the council, many were unsure. What will this prove? Asked one elder. That you can speak of love and music. No, she said, it will prove that feeling is not the opposite of logic, it is its partner. Some elders were still silent, but one elder, Toval, the oldest among them, leaned forward. Then speak, and we will listen. 1 week later, a special gathering was arranged. The Hall of Reflection, normally used for scientific debate, was filled with something new. Soft lights, art from both cultures, and even a few instruments brought from Earth. The seats were full. Valari scholars, human envoys, students, and council elders all sat together in quiet curiosity. At the front stood Elias and Alira, side by side. Elias stepped forward first. When I came to Valerian, he began, I thought I was here to observe and report. But I found something more. I found someone who wanted to learn, not just with her mind, but with her heart. Alira stepped forward. Her voice was calm, but full of emotion. When I first met Elias, I saw him as a subject of study. But soon I discovered something I had never experienced. Connection. It was not in books, it was not in data, but it was real. They then told their story not as a list of facts, but as a journey. They spoke of the garden walks, the music, the quiet moments, the struggle with the council, and the silent messages sent across forbidden channels. Alira paused, then said, I once believed reproduction was a process, nothing more. Now I see that for humans, and maybe for Valari too, it begins with something deeper, care, trust, partnership. She looked at Elias, and their eyes met briefly. It begins with understanding, she said. Then Elias took out a small earth instrument, a simple wooden flute. He played the lullaby she had learned, softly, with care. The music filled the hall, gentle and peaceful. And then Alira began to hum along. Her voice, light and musical, joined the tune. A quiet wave passed through the room. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the elders sat still, listening. It was not a grand performance, but it was honest. After the event, there was silence. No applause. That was not the Valari way. But something deeper had changed. One elder spoke softly. Perhaps we have been missing something. Another added, emotion did not weaken her. It gave her strength. For the first time, the council agreed to create a new branch of study, emotive intelligence, the balance of feeling and logic. Alira was offered the role of lead guide. She accepted. Later that evening, Alira and Elias returned to the garden one last time before he left Valerian. He had duties back on Earth, and she had work to do here. They sat on their favorite bench under the starlight. You're leaving tomorrow, Alira said. Yes, Elias replied. But not forever. Alira looked down. Will you miss me? Alira smiled gently. Every day. She nodded slowly. I think I will too. There was a quiet moment between them. I'm proud of you, he said. You helped change a world. No, Alira said softly. We did. Elias stood up, holding something in his hand. It was a small device, a music pendant from Earth. He gave it to her. When you miss me, he said, just play this. Alira took it carefully. And when you hear my voice in the stars, she said, remember what we built. They did not say goodbye. They didn't need to, because what they had started would continue. Weeks passed, then months. The new Emotive Intelligence Center became a place where humans and Valari worked together. They painted, wrote, debated, and sometimes even cried. Feelings were no longer hidden. They were understood, and in the center of it all was Alira. No longer just a cultural guide, but a bridge between two species. She wore the music pendant around her neck every night. Before entering rest, she played the lullaby, not just to remember Elias, but to remember what she had become. Someone more than Valari, someone who felt, someone who cared.